Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our TQ University webinar. As the invitation, mentioned, we're going to be talking about performance and personality data. I'm sure you've heard, before our new feature, TQ Insights, and we really wanted to show you in diving into, best practices and how to use this new tool. So with me today, I have Janice Young. She's going to be sharing with you a lot of information regarding performance and coaching, mentoring, and hopefully, you will find that information useful for your managers, especially. And me, Hema Perez, I'm going to be, showing you in the system where to find this information. We just had a release this week, so we'll be also showing you a new feature that we added to TQ Insight. So we're very excited to be here today with you all. So just a couple, housekeeping notes. Right now, all of you are muted. If you have any questions, you can either, wait till the end. We're going to open it up, for questions at the end of the webinar. But if, you want to go ahead and type your question, you can type it at any time. You should have a menu on the right-hand side of your screen. So just type the question and we're going to see it and we'll answer it as soon as possible. Also, if we run out of time, for example, just, be aware that we're going to be sending you the recording of this webinar. And if there are any questions that we couldn't answer, we're going to get back to you as well. So again, type any questions that all of them will be answered. So, with that said, I'm going to, let Janice start the webinar.
Thank you, Hema. Again, my name is Janice Young. I am part of the consulting team here at TalentQuest. I have a background in IO psychology, human resources, and I do a lot in the area of personality and engagement as well. So thank you all for joining us on this webinar. We have built in quite a bit of information to cover in a very short amount of time. So we'll try not to breeze through this and talk through it with you all for the next 40 minutes or so. So again, thank you for joining us. And we just want to kick off today by mentioning not only TQ Insights, but really how you can leverage the personality data that you have stored within TalentQuest in your performance management processes and your development processes as well. So with that said, as an introduction, I really like this quote, and we wanted to pull this in today to just get our minds thinking about this topic and how important our people are. So this quote says, "Great vision without great people is irrelevant." And I'm sure most of you all would agree with this statement and how true it is that without the right people standing behind your vision of your organization or even your team, that it's almost impossible to complete that task or to really be successful in achieving your goals and your business goals as well. So some of these big decisions that you might be faced with as a manager in terms of hiring people and developing your people, I mean, this can really be a make or break in terms of whether or not your job as a manager is enjoyable or whether or not it's frustrating over a long period of time. So the people that you have working with you, those people that you've hired and that you've built your team with are really critical to success, critical to engagement levels of your team, which we know then impact productivity and the bottom line as well. So it's almost like a domino trickling effect that can be positive or negative depending on the type of people that you've brought in your organization. Thankfully, today we'll give you some tips on how to really leverage personality data and what you know about each individual and how you can really use that to your advantage and use that information to really help coach your employees, to understand them better, to build your teams, really just to optimize your team. So with that said, that's kind of our preface and what we'll focus on today and why having great people in place is so important. So why use personality assessments? I'm sure that most of you who have joined this webinar today are familiar with our TalentQuest personality assessment and have used them quite a bit. Because of that, I won't spend too much time giving an overview on the personality assessments themselves, but if by any chance you are unfamiliar, our Talent Quest assessment is a proprietary personality assessment that we've built in-house, and it measures 16 different personality factors. Those personality factors have been found, and research has showed that each individual possesses those 16 personality traits to some degree and at some level. So our test, when you administer it either to candidates or even to your employees who are already employed with you or on your team, you're able to have just a ton of information about that candidate or about that person that you may or may not have had before. So we'll talk about where that information lives within Talent Quest, and then how you can really use it beyond selection when we talk about coaching and managing, and how that information can really help you really carry out the entire talent management cycle. So beyond select, with your manage and your develop and your retaining your employees as well. So what you see here on this slide is one of my favorite pictures. And you see that it is a horse that is attempting to climb a tree. So the quote here says, if your company mission is to climb a tree, which would you rather do? Hire a squirrel or train a horse? So this picture makes it very clear that, of course, you would want to spend your time, your money, your efforts in hiring a squirrel rather than training a horse. So that's really what our personality assessments are geared to do. We really want you to be able to find the right fit for the job or for that particular role, and find someone who already has what it takes to succeed embedded within their DNA. They may benefit from additional training or development courses, but if they already have those key characteristics ingrained within their DNA, then it's going to be much easier for them to succeed. They're going to have a higher likelihood of success than when you compare that to someone who does not have that success DNA, or who is just not a good fit for that particular role. So that's what you see here with the horse who is attempting to climb the tree. You can put $1 million training dollars into this horse, and you can provide them with the best working conditions, and they can have an awesome team, an awesome manager, and at the end of the day, they will still be very unsuccessful at achieving that task. So we want to keep that in mind when we talk about why personality assessments and why even use them. It just really helps us identify those candidates who are the best fit match for the role, and someone who is just going to have a higher probability of success. That way, hopefully, you're not investing time and energy and dollars into an individual who is not going to be a good fit. And then when we talk about, in addition to that, just really giving some overview into personality and why it's so important. Personality is something that, from a definition standpoint, can be misunderstood. So we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about what personality is and what it is not. So it can be defined as the combination of characteristics or qualities that form an individual's distinctive character. So we know that you're born with your personality, and it's embedded within your DNA. The interesting thing about personality is that we don't actually see personality, but contrast, we actually see the behaviors that are derived from a person's personality. So we'll talk about that a little bit more and give you an example of what that means. But when you're observing other individuals and your team members, what you're really observing is their behavior, not per se their personality. Over time, there have been many theories of personality and its structure for measurement. It's something that's been researched since the 1930s. So there is a ton of research done on personality, and it's all very consistent. But you will find, if you decide that this is your area of interest, that there are many, many theories associated with personality. And then also, there's a lot of debate on the topic of personality and whether or not it's genetic or whether or not personality is learned. What we do know is that research indicates that about 80% of our personality is genetic. So we are born, whether you like it or not, with about 80% of your personality already made up in your genetic makeup. So that's already there, with only about 20% left for modifications to that personality that you were born with. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to change your personality, but one thing that you can change or modify is your behavior. So for an example, you may see that someone on your team, or maybe even you yourself, may be a natural introvert, and you just prefer to work alone or really pull away from the crowd, and that's how you work best. And you may also find yourself in a position that requires you to be the opposite of that. And you may have to be very outgoing and very social and attend a lot of networking events, or just put yourself in situations that really require you to step out of your comfort zone. In that case, you may be successful in that role, and you may learn how to adjust or modify your behavior so that you can be successful in that type of role, even though your natural preference and your personality is to be more introverted. So you do see that there are individuals who can master modifying their behavior and adapting to their environment or to the situation. Now, outside of work, you may find that they are still very much so an introvert, but they've mastered how to modify their behavior to be successful in their current role. Another example that I like to give, going back to that first bullet on how we see behavior and not personality, is that it's very easy to misjudge someone based on their personality and what you perceive to be their behavior. So for an example, if I'm very shy, and let's say that I don't talk very much, from the outside looking in, you may assume that I'm arrogant. But in actuality, I may just be shy. So you're seeing my behaviors that are derived from my personality. So me being withdrawn and keeping to myself and maybe not socializing with the group is just a byproduct of me being naturally shy, as opposed to being arrogant or antisocial. So again, there's lots of research that's been done on personality. And again, we can absolutely change our behavior, but personality is ingrained at 80% in your genetics. And even by about 7 years old, your personality is pretty defined and set in stone. So that's a very early age to have such a defined picture of what your personality looks like. And then lastly, you see here on this slide, it says the key point is that 89% of hiring failures are due to poor culture fit. So again, personality has a lot to do with things and why people are successful. And it plays a very big role into coaching and developing your staff. And it's not, technical abilities or technical expertise or lack thereof that causes individuals to not be a good fit. It's really about the culture fit. And that comes from an individual's personality and whether or not they'll be a good fit for the organization. So it leans towards putting more emphasis on these personality aspects rather than educational background and certifications and whatnot that lean more towards their individual technical ability. So how can you leverage this data? So all this information and background that I've given you about personality, and thankfully you have a ton of this information just readily accessible to you in the Talent Quest system. And we really want to show you how you can leverage this data using TQ Insights. So the new platform that we've released not too long ago this summer. And we're going to give you some tips today and show you, almost flip back and forth between the presentation and the Talent Quest system so that you can see exactly where you can pull this information into your coaching and your feedback sessions, and how easy it is to do so. So one of the neat things about TQ Insights is that it really helps you in terms of motivating and coaching your employees. And you'll see just a moment in the system the types of information that's available to you on each of your employees.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in really quick to the system, so bear with me one moment. Now, hopefully all of you can see my screen. If you have any questions or any problems, please type them. But as you can see, I'm logged in into the Talent Quest system, and I'm logging as James Franklin. In this case, James is a manager. So I'm going to start by showing you the employee profile. So how James can access, anybody in his team, and he can access their profile and see all this information that is going to help him, coach and develop his team. So, there are a couple of ways that we can access, anybody's profile. You have your site-wide search, so you can, just type the name of the employee in this case, or, the direct report, and access, their profile that way. Or we can also come here to My Team link. James, is going to be able to click here at any time. He's going to be able to drill down the hierarchy. So if his direct reports, they themselves are managers and they have direct reports, in this case, James is going to be able to access, anybody that it's under his umbrella. In this case, we're going to access Frank's profile. So I'm going to click here on this quick link. The system is going to give me just a brief overview and summary of his profile, but I'm going to access his full profile. And this is where we're going to be able to see all this information. So you're familiar with this screen. The first section is the personal information, where we can see, the hire date, when this employee was hired, their title, if they want to relocate, if they want to be in a position in the future, or any location preferences. This is going to be helpful for you as manager, but we're going to focus here on this section, TQ Insights. So as you can see here, we have two tabs. One is called Key Assets, and another one is called Management Approach. So under Key Assets, based on that personality data and the TQ16 assessment, the system is providing the manager with information about these employees' assets or strengths. So in this case, Frank is very creative. And the system is going to tell the manager how he can leverage this creativity. It's also going to tell the manager that another asset is that Frank is very independent. So, maybe he's ready to take on more projects because he's independent, he's a go-getter. So it's a good opportunity for, the manager to maybe, based on this information, coach and help Frank in this case, to maybe take on more, or, decide where the career path for him would be.
And all of this information is coming straight from their results from the TQ16 assessment. So any of your team members or your employees who have taken the Talent Quest assessment, when you pull up their employee profile, you'll be able to see this information on them as well. And when we talk about motivating and coaching your employees, those key assets are really going to be very helpful, because even when it talks about him being very creative, it even says, how do you leverage this asset? How can I, as a manager, leverage this asset? And it tells you right there some of the things that this employee would really enjoy, like being given opportunities to come up with new ways of doing things, thinking outside of the box, and being given the opportunity to brainstorm. So this is really how you can coach and motivate your employees, by tapping into their specific areas of strength based on their personality. So very awesome information here. This Key Assets tab is really going to be beneficial in your coaching and ongoing feedback conversations.
Another section that we just released recently this week, so more than likely, probably you haven't seen it yet, is this second tab, management approach. So here, the system is going to give the manager just more information regarding, how to manage this employee. So in this case, Frank, he needs a structure. So it's good information from the manager. It's good to know this because then there maybe you're going to be able to provide Frank with more structure in the projects, for example, or adapting to the culture. So maybe there can be a success here, some challenges associated with managing this person because they are not inclined to follow rules. So this is really good information, extra information from the manager on how to manage this person. So not only how to make the most of the assets, but also how to make the most of maybe some limitations or maybe things to consider as a manager when mentoring and coaching and motivating this employee. So again, we just added this second tab this week. So if you have already the personality data in the system, is going to be added automatically. You don't really have to do anything extra. You will see the second tab as soon as you access anybody's profile.
Yep, awesome. And with the management approach, this is really going to help you build that mentoring relationship between yourself and your employees. It's really tailored to that individual's personality, and it's just really going to provide you with more information than you would have had before. And you're well aware, if you manage a team, that no employee is the same. Everyone's personality is different. Everyone learns differently. Everyone prefers to do things in a different way. So you almost have to tailor your management approach to every single employee. There is no one size fits all, especially when people can be so different from one another in terms of their personality. They all may be very successful. They all may be your top performers, but they all reach that goal or accomplish that goal at a very different pace or in a very different way. So as a manager, we believe this management approach tab will really help you tap into the unique needs of your team members. Okay. Also, one of the other things that the TQ Insights will really help you leverage is how to deliver and discuss feedback more effectively. So we've talked about how to motivate and coach your employees, and even using those assets to increase employee engagement and teamwork. By tapping into their strengths, you're naturally going to increase productivity and motivation, which in turn will have nothing but a positive impact on that individual and on your team as well. But also, when we think about how difficult it can be sometimes, and in the presentation, we'll talk more about feedback and coaching, but leveraging your TQ Insights when it's time to do your reviews, and how you can really approach those conversations and situations in the best way, dependent upon that individual's personality. So Hema will show you in the system what that looks like and where you can find that information as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me jump to the system again. I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to go to James' homepage. So I don't know, if you didn't use this feature, at the end of the year, if you have, an annual review process, but maybe you're planning on launching a mid-year review, or maybe, you're thinking, or you're starting to prepare for the end of the year. We wanted to show you this feature because, as Janice mentioned, is going to help managers to deliver that feedback more efficiently and more productively. So let me show you two scenarios where managers are going to have access to this information. So as you can see here under James' homepage, he has two tasks. One task to fill out the appraisal, and then another task to conduct a review. So I'm going to click on Frank's name, and we're going to access the form. So as you can see here, we have Frank, we have our form. Of course, your form might be different than the one that we use in this example. But the idea is that while the manager, is thinking about these competencies and, rating and entering comments, the idea is that he access the light bulb to help him write those comments. So, for example, in this case, information regarding Frank says, TQ Insight says that maybe he has communication challenges. He focused on the big picture, not on a lot of detail. So maybe, while the manager is writing those comments, he can follow some of these tips to make those comments more efficient. So when, he's meeting with Frank and Frank reads those comments and Frank accesses the report, he can really, read those comments and they're based on his needs, basically, if that makes sense. Also, he's going to be able to see here that Frank is resistant to change in this case. So, that this manager might take that into consideration when writing these comments. So managers are going to have access to, the light bulb in this case throughout the form, so they can use it at any time to write those comments and also, prepare for the meeting. So I'm going to come back to the home page and show you, what it's looked like when the appraisal is at that step. This step when, manager needs to meet with the employee and discuss the form and discuss the feedback and discuss performance throughout the year. So, at that time, the manager will have the task to conduct a performance review. And as you can see here, we have the light bulb again. This is the TQ Insights icon. So from here, manager can click right there on the light bulb and see the exact same information. So when they are preparing to conduct that meeting, they can still, access this information to prepare for that meeting and make sure that when delivering that feedback, they get the most of that meeting.
Yep, thank you, Hema. So that's awesome. And this is something that is new, obviously, to Talent Quest, and something that we haven't had before. But this can have such a huge impact on your feedback conversations and really helping you to prepare for that conversation. And again, knowing that each feedback conversation between your team members and your employees is going to be very different, and how you approach those situations should not be the same for each of your team members. So this information will really help you tailor those conversations and have that employee's interests in mind, and know how they potentially might respond to some of the feedback that you'll give them. So here are just some general tips for providing feedback. Although you have all of this personality data information available to you, these are some things that we just want to remind you of as well when preparing to have those conversations. So we want to be sure that we provide feedback in close proximity to the event. So outside of your standard review process, you should be having, or we encourage you to have, continuous feedback sessions. So if there was an event that occurred, whether it be positive or a situation that may need to be addressed, we would like that feedback to follow very closely after. So if you would like to congratulate them or just really talk about how we can do things differently in the future, we want to make sure that we're having those conversations almost immediately after that event occurred. We also want to be sure to focus on the behavior and not the person, just making our conversation more objective and focusing on the facts of the situation. Again, we'd like to compliment behaviors when the employee performs well. So don't miss those opportunities to recognize your employees or congratulate them on a job well done. Just a simple thank you, that was awesome, or a handwritten note goes a long way and can really boost the employee's morale, their motivation, their productivity, to know, hey, I was recognized for doing a good job and my hard work has really paid off, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So those very small gestures can really pay off and can really have a huge impact on the productivity level of your team. We also like to remind managers not to give tough feedback in the absence of positive feedback. So we know that there will be times when you must give tough feedback, but we'd like you to sandwich that in between some positive feedback, and knowing that there are things that individuals do well in addition to the things that they may need to work on. So highlight some of those strengths or some of those assets of the employee when giving tough feedback. It just makes it a little more easier to swallow, and it lets that employee know that they haven't done everything wrong, that there are a lot of things they do right, and that there are just some areas that could use a little bit of improvement. One way to get buy-in from your employees and to really make sure that you all are on the same page and that they're committed to whatever next steps you all put in place is to come up with a plan together and really involve the employee in those discussions and in those plans, rather than coming to the meeting or to the discussion with a predefined plan or here's what we are going to do moving forward. Instead, you should ask open-ended questions to your employee or team member to see what they think might be best or what they would prefer or what ways they can think of to reach that same goal. So you may start your question or your discussion off with how might we fill in the blank? How might we accomplish this goal? How might we address this situation in a different way in the future, and really allow that employee to provide you with some feedback of their own. It will definitely increase buy-in, and you should have a more positive result in terms of follow-through as well. And then some of the other things we have here is just to inform your team that proactively seeking feedback is encouraged, so not to be afraid to approach you and ask for feedback or ask how they're doing, and then offer some resources to help improve. So we know that in our reports, in our Talent Quest assessment reports, we have some developmental resources that pull into those assessments. And if you have some resources of your own that are either job specific or very specific to the organization, suggest those resources to the employee, whether it's a seminar or a conference or a webinar or a speaking engagement. Just be sure to provide them with some examples of things that they can do to improve their performance and just to better themselves professionally overall. And then real quickly, here are just some reactions to feedback: acceptance, surprise, defense, anger, rejection. We're hoping that with you now being able to leverage TQ Insights, that you'll be able to minimize some of the defensive or anger or rejection and using those tips that we just provided. So knowing how to approach that conversation is key from a personality standpoint, and should really help these discussions go very well if you approach them in the way that the employee would prefer to be approached. So using those tips in the performance appraisal section that Hema just showed you can really benefit how the message is received from that employee standpoint. So we always would like you to be prepared for the unexpected, but we'd like to give you as many resources as possible that you can prepare in advance for these conversations and the type of reactions that you might receive. And then here's a quote here that says, organizations effective at teaching managers to coach deliver higher levels of employee productivity, employee engagement, and financial performance. So we spoke about this a little bit early on in the presentation, but this really drives it home and how important effective coaching and managing of your employees really is, and what a big impact it can have on productivity, employee engagement, and even your bottom line and financial performance. So we're hoping that you'll be able to leverage this personality data that we have in the Talent Quest system and use it to your advantage, and know that even the smallest adjustment in how you engage your employees, the things that you do to motivate them or coach them, and how you approach those feedback conversations can really impact productivity and engagement, and in turn the bottom line. So just making those small tailored adjustments can really pay off in the long run. And then lastly, one of the things that we would like to discuss, and then we will open up the floor for questions, is coaching for performance. So we talked about feedback and personality, and this is just another model that you can have in your back pocket on how to coach for performance. And since you have all of that personality data available to you, well, how can you then use that to coach your employees? So one of the things that we would encourage you to do is to clarify the goals first. So what does success look like in this role for that individual, for the team, to really be sure that you're able to clarify those goals with your employee. The next is just to identify obstacles and to really say, what is in the way of us achieving the success? And these are questions that you can ask with your employees so that you all are able to come to these conclusions together and to really spend some time thinking through these and identifying those obstacles. And then once you've identified the obstacles, how are you going to overcome those? So we suggest brainstorming alternatives. So in this coaching session, you've clarified the goals, what success looks like. You've identified those barriers and those obstacles to achieving that success. But then how might we overcome those obstacles? What else can we do to be sure that we can achieve this level of success that we've outlined? So again, coming to those alternatives together is really going to help increase the buy-in from your employee and from your team member, knowing that you all came to those conclusions together. And then once you have a few alternatives outlined, the next step would be to choose an action. So which action is best out of all of those things that we've come up with together, and which way can we get the most bang for our buck? In which way are we going to achieve this outcome or hit the target with the fewest bullets? So we want to work smart, and that's really going to help us do that. So narrowing down those options and really picking one that is going to be best. And then lastly, once you've gone through these 4 steps of the coaching model, it's most important to hold each other accountable and to hold your team members accountable. So how will we know if we are in fact successful? It's great, and sometimes it looks awesome on paper and you have this plan and you put it in place, but if there's no way to measure the outcome or to revisit that plan just to see where you landed, it may not produce any movement at all. So there has to be a way to hold each other accountable and a way to know how to measure success and how you'll know if you've really succeeded and reached your goal. So this is just a model that we'd like you to have, and that you can really just keep these tips in mind on when you're coaching for performance. These are just some things that will help you have that conversation and make it a really productive and effective conversation. If you hit all of these targets, you cover all of these bases, we can almost guarantee that you will have a much more positive outcome than what you may have had before. So it just adds a little bit of structure to the process, makes it streamlined, and you can almost check off these buckets as you go. So that was just a model that we wanted to have for you and to share with you. I know that we've gone over a ton of information today and gave you some background on personality and why it matters. Don't forget about that analogy in the horse attempting to climb the tree. We know that those personality assessments are really going to help us identify those squirrels or identify those candidates who have the highest probability of success. And then using TQ Insights in our system to really help you motivate your employees and increase engagement and build those mentoring relationships between yourself and your team, and ultimately how to give more productive feedback and to have those effective coaching conversations as well. So I truly hope that this was information that you find beneficial and that you're able to put in practice. I think we do want to open up the floor for questions. If any of you all have any questions about the information that I've shared, that Hema has shared, or more specific to the Talent Quest system.
Yeah, so we'll give you in a couple of minutes to type any questions that you might have. Okay, so we have one question that just came. And the question is, I believe that personality doesn't change, but I'm wondering if you consider that it would be a good idea to maybe repeat the test or launch the test to somebody after a certain period of time. I'm wondering if like maybe life-changing events like maybe the death of a loved one or divorce can change these results.
So that's a very good question. The personality data is very valid and very reliable, and there's really no need to retest for a period of about 5 to 7 years is what we suggest. And if you have data on this person within the past 5 to 7 years, we suggest that there's no need to retest. You'll see if you do that the results are going to be almost identical. Now, in this question, it did ask about specific life events, and that's the only caveat or the only instance where you may see a slight shift in responses. So if someone was under a high degree of stress when they initially took the assessment, if they were experiencing a life-changing event at that moment, then we would suggest that they retest once some time has passed after that situation. But other than that, 5 to 7 years would be our standard.
Thank you, Janice. We have another information. This one I've heard before. I'm sorry, another question. And is, can the employee see this information about himself or herself? And the answer is no. Right now, this information is only available to managers and administrators, so employees will not see it. And we recommend that managers don't share it. The same way as we recommend that you don't share the report with the personality assessment that comes out when they finish the assessment, the report that comes out of the assessment. We recommend either that you have one of your staff, hiring managers, maybe train on how to interpret the report to share it. But we wouldn't recommend you sharing this information, without any training or background on how to interpret this test. So no, at this moment, the employees have not access to this information. Okay. I have one last question that came in, and it's how to update a candidate record to an employee record. And that it's a good question because when you're launching the assessments, of course, those, of course, if you're doing it for hiring purposes, more than likely will be, for that reason. When you're launching the assessment, that individual is not an employee yet. So the system creates that record as a candidate. In order for TQ Insights to work properly, that candidate will need to be made an employee. So let me show you really quick how to do that. I'm going to go back to the system. And I'm going to have to log in as an administrator. So let me jump really quick. I'm going to pause my screen really quick, but I will be right back. Okay, so hopefully you can all see my screen now. So I'm logging as an administrator, and basically, what you will need to do is, hover over the go-to menu, and under the users module, click on manage users. And then here you search for the name of that candidate. In this case, it's going to be Linda candidate. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to click search. The system is going to find it. So we click on the name. And basically, right now you're going to access that profile. As you can see here, it says user type candidate. So I want to change that. So I'm going to click edit. And here under employee type, if you click on the drop down, you're going to see the option to change this record to an employee record. So as soon as you save it, and you would, it's going to give me an error message. I'm sorry. Yeah, we need the employee ID, but we also need to add the hire date. So let's say that that person was hired today. You can also, of course, from here, assign the manager, the title, or if you have a data feed, as long as the employee ID, the email, first and last name match, the system is going to update the rest of the information. So right now, that record, that it's now an employee, not a candidate, and this system is going to bring all that personality data to this employee record, and managers will have access to TQ Insights. So just remember to merge those records. We have a candidate record with the assessment, and then we have a separate employee record. Then the system is not going to know that that individual is the same person, and is not going to be able to bring the personality data under that employee record. If you have any questions about how to do this, or how to merge records, that maybe you had in the past, feel free to email us at support@talentquest.com, and we'll help you with this process, because that is key for TQ Insights to work. Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions. If something comes up later, maybe you're thinking about the presentation, or when you receive the recording, again, we're more than happy to help you with anything that you need. Just send us an email at support@talentquest.com, and we'll get back with you as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.